The smoke still rose from the ruins 3 days after the fire. Aria knelt in the ash, her fingers searching through the debris of what had once been the Temple of Whispers. The sacred texts were gone, centuries of healing knowledge reduced to carbon and memory. The herb gardens where she'd spent every dawn tending medicinal plants were blackened earth. And the 14 sisters who'd raised her, taught her, loved her despite her broken voice. She wouldn't think about that. Couldn't think about their screams as the flames consumed the temple while she'd been away gathering nightshade root in the forest. Her hands found something solid beneath the ash. A pendant. Sister Alara's pendant, the one she never removed, silver carved with the symbol of the Whispering Mother. Aria clutched it to her chest, her mouth opening in a silent sob. No sound came out. It never did. Aria had been born with a voice that wouldn't speak. The midwife who delivered her had declared it a curse, a child who emerged silent, not even crying as babies should. Her mother had abandoned her at the temple gates when she was 3 days old, leaving only a note, *, she is broken. Fix her or let the gods take her, *. The Whispering Sisters had done neither. They'd raised her, taught her their healing arts, showed her that a voice wasn't necessary to hear the songs of herbs and bones and blood. Aria learned to communicate through hand signs, through the careful arrangement of flowers whose meanings the sisters understood, through the pure intention in her touch when she laid hands on the sick. She became the best healer the temple had ever trained. By 16, she could identify 300 plants by touch alone. By 18, she could set bones that other healers declared hopeless. By 20, she could draw poison from wounds that should have. But she couldn't save her sisters from fire. Aria stood slowly, ash falling from her threadbare healer's robe. The pendant went around her neck, cold against her skin. She had nothing else now. No home. No family. No purpose beyond the knowledge carried in her head and hands. The nearest settlement was Thornhaven, a fortified town 2 days' walk south. Aria had been there twice before, selling healing salves with Sister Alara. The townspeople had been uncomfortable around her. Silent healers made people nervous. They wanted to hear prayers and incantations, wanted the comfort of a voice telling them they'd survive. Aria had only her hands and her silence. But Thornhaven was better than starving in the ruins of her childhood. She gathered what she could salvage, a small knife, a water skin that had somehow survived, a leather pouch containing her last remaining herbs. Then she turned her back on the only home she'd ever known and started walking. The first night, she slept in a tree. The second night, she found a cave that smelled of bear but appeared abandoned. On the third day, as the sun reached its apex, Aria heard screaming. She froze on the forest path, her healer's instincts immediately cataloging the sound. Male. Young. In extraordinary pain. The screams cut off abruptly, replaced by a gurgling sound that meant internal bleeding or damaged lungs. Aria ran toward the sound. She burst through dense undergrowth into a clearing that looked like a battlefield. The earth was scorched in a perfect circle, trees blackened and bent away from the epicenter as if blown by an explosion. And in the center of the destruction, surrounded by what Aria initially thought were strange black rocks, lay a man. No. Not rocks. Bodies. Burned bodies, their armor melted to their flesh, their weapons fused to their hands. At least 20 of them arranged in a circle, all facing inward toward the man at the center. The survivor. Aria approached cautiously, her healer's assessment taking over shock. The man was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair matted with blood and ash. His clothes were fine once, she could see the remains of embroidery along the collar, but they were scorched and torn. And his skin. His skin was covered in black marks. Not burns. Not tattoos. Something else. They moved subtly, like oil on water, forming patterns that hurt to look at directly. Curse marks. Aria had seen curse marks once before, on a merchant who'd stumbled into the temple begging for help. Sister Alara had tried everything, but curse magic was beyond healing arts. The merchant had died screaming within 3 days. This man had curse marks covering 70% of his body. He should have been dead already. But he was breathing, shallow, pained breaths that rattled in his chest. And when Aria knelt beside him, his eyes opened. They were gold. Pure gold, like molten metal, and they fixed on her with desperate intensity. Help. The word came out as barely a whisper, shaped more by lips than by voice. Please. Can't, much longer. Aria's hands moved instinctively to his neck, checking his pulse. Rapid and weak. His skin was burning up, but when she touched the curse marks, they were ice cold. The contradiction alone should have killed him. She needed to assess his injuries, needed to understand what kind of curse this was. But first, she needed him conscious and still. The smoke still rose from the ruins 3 days after the fire. Aria knelt in the ash, her fingers searching through the debris of what had once been the Temple of Whispers. The sacred texts were gone, centuries of healing knowledge reduced to carbon and memory. The herb gardens where she'd spent every dawn tending medicinal plants were blackened earth. And the 14 sisters who'd raised her, taught her, loved her despite her broken voice. She wouldn't think about that. Couldn't think about their screams as the flames consumed the temple while she'd been away gathering nightshade root in the forest. Her hands found something solid beneath the ash. A pendant. Sister Alara's pendant, the one she never removed, silver carved with the symbol of the Whispering Mother. Aria clutched it to her chest, her mouth opening in a silent sob. No sound came out. It never did. Aria had been born with a voice that wouldn't speak. The midwife who delivered her had declared it a curse, a child who emerged silent, not even crying as babies should. Her mother had abandoned her at the temple gates when she was 3 days old, leaving only a note, *, she is broken. Fix her or let the gods take her, *. The Whispering Sisters had done neither. They'd raised her, taught her their healing arts, showed her that a voice wasn't necessary to hear the songs of herbs and bones and blood. Aria learned to communicate through hand signs, through the careful arrangement of flowers whose meanings the sisters understood, through the pure intention in her touch when she laid hands on the sick. She became the best healer the temple had ever trained. By 16, she could identify 300 plants by touch alone. By 18, she could set bones that other healers declared hopeless. By 20, she could draw poison from wounds that should have. Impossible, he breathed. You're a Songweaver. The gold light flashed one final time, so bright Aria had to close her eyes. Then it died, taking the pain with it, leaving only a deep ache and the smell of ozone in the air. When Aria opened her eyes, the curse marks on the man's skin had faded from black to gray. Not gone, but lessened. Less active. And on her own skin, running from her right wrist up her arm, across her shoulder, and spreading like branches across her collarbone. Golden marks. Intricate, beautiful, alive. They pulsed gently with her heartbeat, warm against her skin. What? The man started, then coughed. Blood flecked his lips. What did you do? Aria could only stare at her marked arm, her mind refusing to process what had just happened. She wasn't a Songweaver. Songweavers were legends, extinct for 300 years. They were the healers who could cure anything with their voices, who could sing life back into the dying, who could transfer curses into themselves to save others. The man tried to sit up and immediately collapsed back with a pained gasp. Wait. Don't. I need to. He focused on Aria with obvious effort. You saved my life. But the curse. Did you just take half of it into yourself? Aria touched her marked arm gently. The marks were warm, almost alive. And she could feel them, not as a curse exactly, but as a burden. A weight she was now carrying that hadn't been there before. She'd shared his curse. Split it between them. cut it in half. It was impossible. It was insane. It should have killed them both. But they were alive. "Who are you?" the man asked. His gold eyes studied her with new intensity. "Songweavers died out centuries ago. There hasn't been one since." He trailed off, looking around at the circle of burned corpses. "Since the purge." Aria shook her head. She wasn't a Songweaver. She was just a mute healer with a gift for singing silent songs. This had to be a mistake, an accident, "You have to tell me your name," the man insisted. He tried to sit up again, moving more slowly this time, and managed to prop himself against a scorched tree trunk. "I'm Prince Cassian Ashenblade, third son of King Aldrich the Iron. I was ambushed by my brother's men and cursed with dark magic meant to slowly kill me over days while I watched myself rot from the inside. You just saved my life at the cost of cursing yourself. I need to know who you are so I can." He coughed again, hard enough to double over. "So I can repay the debt." A prince. Aria had just saved a prince. And cursed herself in the process. She touched her throat, then made the hand sign for, "cannot speak." Then she signed her name, letter by letter in the formal sign language used by the Whispering Sisters, Aria. Cassian watched her hands, frowning. "You can't speak. At all." When she shook her head, his frown deepened. "But you sang. I heard you. Not with my ears, but..." He touched his chest, over his heart. "Here. I heard you here." Aria touched her own chest, over her heart, then touched his. She signed, "Soul Song." No voice needed. "Soul Song," Cassian repeated. His gold eyes widened. "By the gods. You really are a Songweaver. A mute Songweaver, which, actually makes sense. The old text said Songweavers didn't need spoken words. Their gift bypassed normal voice entirely." He looked at the marks on her arm. "But that means you're in danger. If anyone discovers what you are..." A horn blew in the distance. Then another, closer. Cassian's expression turned grim. "They're coming. My brother's men. They'll want to confirm I'm dead." He tried to stand, staggered, and would have fallen if Aria hadn't caught him. He was surprisingly heavy, all muscle despite his lean frame. "You need to run," Cassian said urgently. "If they find you here, with me, with those marks, they'll kill you. Or worse, they'll take you to my brother, and he'll use you. Force you to sing for him, break you until you cure every curse and wound and illness he can profit from." Aria met his eyes and shook her head firmly. "I'm serious," Cassian insisted. "I'm already dead. This curse will kill me in days even lessened. There's no point in both of us dying." Aria pointed at him, then at herself, then made the sign for, together. She wasn't leaving him. He'd asked for help, and she'd given it. Now they were bound, by the shared curse if nothing else. "You're insane," Cassian said, but there was something almost like gratitude in his voice. "Fine. But we move now. Can you help me walk?" Aria nodded and positioned herself under his arm, taking as much of his weight as she could. He was tall, at least a foot taller than her, and she was small even for a woman. But she'd carried injured people before. She knew how to distribute weight, how to move efficiently. They'd made it perhaps 20 feet into the forest when the soldiers arrived. Aria heard them before she saw them, the crash of boots through undergrowth, the shouts of men searching, the occasional horn blast signaling to the others. She pulled Cassian behind a massive oak and held her breath. "Spread out," someone shouted. "The prince can't have gone far. He was cursed with shadow rot. He should be dead or dying within this area." "What about the ambush site?" another voice called. "Check it. Count the bodies. Make sure one of them is Cassian." Footsteps approaching. Getting closer. Aria felt Cassian tense beside her, his hand moving to his belt where a sword should have been but wasn't. He was unarmed. Wounded. Barely able to stand. They were going to be found. Cassian leaned close to Aria's ear and whispered, "When I make noise, you run. Don't look back. Don't try to help. Just run." Aria shook her head violently. "It's not a request," Cassian said. "It's an order from." Aria clapped her hand over his mouth. Then she did something desperate and probably stupid. She sang again. Not to him this time. To the forest. To the trees and earth and small creatures hiding in the undergrowth. She poured her intention into the song, shaped it into a request, a plea for help, for concealment, for the forest to hide them as it had hidden her so many times before. The golden marks on her arm flared with light. And the forest answered. Not obviously. Not in ways the soldiers would notice immediately. But Aria felt it, the subtle shift of branches overhead, the sudden growth of moss and vines around the oak tree's base, the way shadows seemed to deepen and pool where she and Cassian hid. The golden marks on her arm blazed with warmth, and Aria felt the song flowing out of her like water from a broken dam. It had no words, no melody she could have hummed even if she'd had a voice. But it spoke nonetheless. To the ancient roots beneath their feet, to the watching ravens in the branches, to the very essence of wild things that remembered when humans were prey instead of predators. Hide us, the song whispered. We are hunted. We are wounded. Please. Where did they go? A soldier called out. He was close, so close Aria could see his boots through a gap in the newly thickened undergrowth. The blood trail leads right to this tree and then just stops. Spread out, another commanded. Check every tree hollow, every bush. They can't have gone far. Cassian's hand found areas in the darkness. His grip was weak, fever-hot, but steady. A silent message, trust this. Stay still. Aria's song continued, softer now, a lullaby to the forest. Keep us safe. Just a little longer. The boots moved past their hiding spot. Leaves rustled as soldiers searched the immediate area, their frustrated curses growing louder as they found nothing. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, a horn blew, the signal to regroup. The prince isn't here, the commander's voice carried through the trees. Either he's dead and something dragged the body away, or he had help. We report back to Prince Dorian. Let him know the Shatterat curse should finish the job even if Cassian escaped. What about the burned bodies? Someone asked. We're just leaving them. They're dead. They did their job. Move out. The sounds of the soldiers retreating faded slowly. Aria kept singing for another 10 minutes, until she was certain they were truly gone. Only then did she let the song fade, and the moment it did, exhaustion crashed over her like a physical blow. Her legs buckled. Cassian caught her, though he swayed dangerously himself. What you just did, he said quietly, his gold eyes wide with something between awe and fear. Aria, that wasn't just healing magic. You commanded the forest. Made it hide us. That's Songweaver magic. True Songweaver magic. Aria touched her throat helplessly. She wanted to explain that she hadn't known she could do that, that she'd acted on instinct and desperation, that she was just as shocked as he was. But all she could do was sign, accident. That wasn't an accident, Cassian countered. He looked down at where the golden marks on her arm were now glowing faintly in the dimming light. You're awakening. The curse transfer triggered something in you. Something that was always there but dormant. He swayed again, and Aria realized with growing concern that despite the curse being lessened, he was getting worse, not better. His skin had taken on a grayish pallor, and when she touched his forehead, he was burning up. She made the sign for, sit, and gently pushed him down to rest against the oak tree. Then she began examining him more thoroughly, her healer's training taking over. The curse marks on his body, now gray instead of black, were still active. She could feel them pulsing under her fingers, still trying to spread, still trying to kill him. But there were also other injuries. Cracked ribs, a deep gash on his side that had reopened with their movement, and something wrong with his left leg that made him hiss in pain when she probed it. Aria pulled out her leather pouch and quickly took stock of her remaining herbs. Not much. Some yarrow for bleeding. Willow bark for pain and fever. A small amount of comfort for the ribs. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough for wounds this severe combined with an active curse. Cassian watched her work with half-lidded eyes. "You can't save me with herbs alone," he said. His voice was getting weaker. "The Shadowrot curse, it eats you from the inside. Even split between us, it's still killing me. Slower, but inevitable." Aria met his eyes and shook her head firmly. She hadn't saved him just to watch him die hours later. "I'm serious," Cassian insisted. "There's only one cure for Shadowrot, and it requires a Grandmaster Cursebreaker. The kind of mage who hasn't existed in this kingdom for 50 years. He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. "Even if we could reach the capital, my brother Dorian would kill us both before we got through the gates." Aria's hands moved rapidly, signing, "Then we don't go to capital. Find other Cursebreaker." "Where?" Cassian asked. "Aria, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but..." She pressed her fingers to his lips, silencing him. Then she pointed at herself, at him, at the golden marks they now shared. She signed, "Connected. Your curse. My curse. Find answer together." Cassian stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less like a dying prince and more like someone who remembered how to hope. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish," he said. "Possibly both." He reached up and took her hand, the one covered in golden marks. "But I'm in no position to argue. If you think you can find a way to break this curse, I'll follow your lead." Aria squeezed his hand once, then got to work. First priority, keep him alive long enough to find help. She crushed yarrow and camphor together, mixing them with water from her skin to make a paste. This she packed into the wound on his side, ignoring Cassian's sharp intake of breath. Then she tore strips from her already tattered robe and bound the wound as tightly as she dared. Next came willow bark tea. She didn't have a pot, but she could make do. Aria found a flat stone, used her knife to shave bark into it, added water, and then... She hesitated. Fire required flint and tinder, neither of which she had. And they couldn't risk the smoke attracting Dorian's soldiers back to their location. But the golden marks on her arm were still warm, still pulsing gently with power she barely understood. Aria placed her marked hand over the stone and, carefully, tentatively, sang. Not to the forest this time. To the elements themselves. To heat and energy and the transformation of water into steam. She shaped the song with her intention, asked rather than commanded, offered her own energy as fuel for what she needed. The golden marks flared. Heat radiated from her palm. And the water in the stone began to steam, then simmer, then boil. Cassian made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. "You're full of surprises, Songweaver." Aria let the bark steep until the water turned bitter dark, then helped Cassian drink it. He grimaced at the taste but drained it all. "Horrible," he muttered. "Effective, but horrible." She signed, "Medicine not meant to taste good." "Fair point." He leaned his head back against the tree, eyes drifting closed. "Aria, I need to rest. Just for a few minutes. But we need to keep moving. Dorian won't give up this easily." Aria nodded, though Cassian's eyes were already closed. She watched his breathing slow into something approaching sleep, then turned her attention to their surroundings. They were in deep forest, at least a day's walk from any settlement she knew. Cassian needed real shelter, real medicine, and most importantly, someone who knew how to break curses. The Whispering Sisters would have known, but they were gone. Burned with their temple and their knowledge. Unless... Aria's hand went to the pendant around her neck. Sister Alara's pendant. The older woman had spoken once of a network of healers scattered across the kingdom, hidden practitioners who kept the old ways alive even after the purge had tried to eliminate all magic users. She'd never given names or locations, but she'd said if Aria ever needed help, she should look for a sign, 3 interlocked circles carved into doorframes or hung as charms. The symbol of the old faith, back when healing magic was considered sacred rather than dangerous. It was a thin hope, but it was something. Aria waited until Cassian's breathing evened out completely, then began her own examination of the golden marks now covering her right arm and shoulder. They were beautiful in their way, intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living things. And they were warm, not hot but pleasantly warm, like being near a friendly fire. She touched them gently and felt connection. Not just to Cassian, though she could sense him nearby, his pain, his exhaustion, his stubborn refusal to surrender even as death circled closer. But also to something bigger. Older. A vast network of songs that existed just beyond normal hearing, waiting to be discovered by those who knew how to listen. This was what Sister Alara had seen in her all those years ago. Why the Whispering Sisters had taken in a mute baby and trained her so carefully. They'd known, somehow, that Aria was more than just a girl without a voice. They'd known she was a Songweaver waiting to awaken. A twig snapped behind her. Aria spun, her hand instinctively moving to the small knife at her belt. A figure stepped out from between the trees, female, old, bent with age but moving with surprising grace. She wore layers of tattered fabric in shades of brown and green that made her nearly invisible against the forest backdrop. And around her neck, hanging from a leather cord, was a charm, 3 interlocked circles. The old woman's eyes, sharp despite her age, took in the scene quickly. The scorched clearing visible through the trees. Cassian slumped against the oak, curse marks visible on his exposed skin. And Aria, small and terrified, with golden marks blazing on her arm. By the mother, the old woman breathed. "Child, what have you done?" Aria's hands moved frantically, signing her story: temple burned, prince dying, curse transferred, soldiers hunting, nowhere to go, please help. The old woman held up one weathered hand. "Slowly, child. I'm too old to follow hand speech that fast." Her eyes crinkled with something that might have been kindness or might have been pity. "But I get the essentials. You're a Songweaver who just awakened. He's cursed with shadow rot. And you split the curse between you." She shook her head slowly. "Either very brave or very foolish." Aria signed, "Both. Everyone keeps saying both." That earned her an actual smile. "I'm Marin. I was a Whispering Sister once, before." She gestured vaguely at the forest. "Before it became too dangerous to wear the robes openly. I heard about the temple. About the fire." Her expression softened. "I'm sorry, child. I knew some of those women. Good healers. Better people." Aria signed, "Then we go to Master Aldwin. Find way to get there." Marin studied her for a long moment. "You realize that even if you reach him, he might refuse to help. Aldwin is particular about who he aids. And breaking a Shadowrot curse requires a price. A heavy one." Aria signed without hesitation, "We'll pay any price. Even your gift?" Marin asked quietly. "Because that's what breaking this curse might cost. Your Songweaver abilities. Your connection to the songs. Everything that makes you what you are." Aria's hands trembled slightly, but she signed, "Life more important than gift." "His life. We'll pay." Marin nodded slowly. Then we need to move quickly. I have a cart hidden nearby and supplies that will help. We can reach the base of the Hollow Mountains in 2 days if we don't stop. She stood with surprising agility for someone so old. But child, you should know something. The prince you're saving. Prince Cassian Ashenblade. Aria nodded. He's not just any prince. He's the broken prince. The one who can't use magic despite coming from the most powerful magical bloodline in the kingdom. The one his brothers call useless. The one the people whisper about as cursed even before this. Marin's eyes bore into Aria's. Saving him won't make you a hero. It'll make you an enemy of Prince Dorian, who wants his brother dead so he can secure his claim to the throne. You'll be hunted for the rest of your life. Aria met the old woman's gaze steadily. She signed, already hunted. Temple burned. Sisters dead. Have nothing to lose. Everyone has something to lose, Marin said softly. But I can see you've made your choice. She turned toward the trees. Follow me. Quickly now. Those soldiers will be back at dawn to search again. Aria moved to Cassian and shook his shoulder gently. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpening when he saw Marin. Aria signed, friend. Help. We go now. Cassian tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Marin scared and moved to his other side, and together they got the prince to his feet. You're heavier than you look, Marin muttered. Muscle weighs more than fat, Cassian said through gritted teeth. Sorry for the inconvenience of not starving myself. Despite everything, Aria felt her lips twitch in what might have been a smile. They moved through the forest slowly, Cassian between them, taking frequent breaks when his strength failed. The curse marks on his visible skin seemed darker in the moonlight, pulsing with a sickly energy that made Aria's own marks ache in sympathy. After what felt like hours, they reached a small clearing where a covered cart waited, hitched to a sturdy-looking mule that regarded them with minimal interest. In the back, Marin commanded. Under the canvas. There's straw and blankets. Make yourselves comfortable. They helped Cassian into the cart, where he immediately collapsed onto the straw with a pained grunt. Aria climbed in after him, and Marin threw the canvas over them both. Stay quiet, Marin said. We'll need to pass through at least one checkpoint. If anyone asks, I'm hauling medicinal herbs to market. Your cargo. Understood. From beneath the canvas, Aria tapped twice on the cart's side. Yes. Understood. The cart lurched into motion. In the darkness under the canvas, Aria felt Cassian shift closer. Thank you, he whispered. For all of this. For saving me. For risking yourself. Aria found his hand in the darkness and squeezed it gently. I don't even know you, Cassian continued. Don't know where you came from or why you'd sacrifice everything for a stranger. But... His grip tightened on her hand. I swear to you, Aria. If we survive this. If we break this curse. I will find a way to repay you. To give you back everything you've lost and more. Aria squeezed his hand again. She didn't need repayment. Didn't expect it. She was a healer. Saving people was what she did, what she was meant for, what gave her life purpose. But in the darkness, with a dying prince's hand in hers and a curse slowly eating her alive, she found herself hoping they would survive. Not for rewards or gratitude. Just for the simple chance to see tomorrow. The cart rolled on through the night. Aria dozed fitfully, waking periodically when they hit rough patches in the road or when Cassian's breathing grew labored. Each time, she placed her hand on his chest and sang softly. Not healing him, she didn't have the strength for that, but comforting him, reminding his body to keep fighting, to hold on just a little longer. And each time she sang, the golden marks on her arm grew slightly brighter, slightly more extensive, spreading another inch across her skin. By dawn, they'd reached the first checkpoint. "Halt," a guard's voice called. "State your business." "Marin Blackwood," came Marin's voice, calm and steady. "Herbalist. Taking medicinal supplies to Thornhaven for market day. Mind if we check the cart?" Aria felt Cassian tense beside her. If they were discovered, if someone recognized him. "Be my guest," Marin said. "Though I warn you, the basket of scat leaf for stomach ailment smells as bad as you'd expect. I can move it if you want to dig through the straw." A pause. Then, that's fine. "Scat leaf, you say? For market?" "People have stomach problems all the time," Marin said dryly. "Someone has to provide the cure, unpleasant as it is." Another pause. Then, "Move along. And next time, warn us about the scat leaf before we get close." The cart lurched forward again. Aria released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Beside her in the darkness, Cassian's hand found hers again. This time, it was him offering comfort, silently thanking her for staying quiet, for trusting Marin's quick thinking. They traveled all day, stopping only when Marin needed to rest the mule or when Cassian's condition deteriorated to the point where Aria had to sing to him, to use her newfound gift to keep his heart beating, his lungs working, his body fighting. Each time she sang, she felt a little weaker. A little more drained. The golden mark spread further up her shoulder, across her collarbone, beginning to creep toward her neck. By nightfall of the second day, when Marin finally called a halt and announced they'd reached the base of the Hollow Mountains, Aria could barely keep her eyes open. "Rest now," Marin said, pulling back the canvas. "Tomorrow we climb. It'll be hard. Harder than anything either of you have done. But Master Aldwin is up there." She pointed to a peak that rose dark against the starlit sky. "And he's your only chance." Aria helped Cassian out of the cart. He was worse than yesterday. The curse marks had darkened again despite her efforts, and he could barely support his own weight. "I'm sorry," he said as they settled against a tree for the night. "I'm slowing you down. If you need to leave me and go ahead." Aria pressed her fingers to his lips, silencing him. Then she signed, slowly so he could see in the firelight, "Together. Started together. Finished together." Cassian caught her hand, holding it gently. "You're remarkable, you know that. Most people would have run. Should have run. But you." He shook his head. "I don't deserve you." Aria signed, "No one deserves anyone. We choose. I choose help. Choose save you." "Why?" Cassian asked. "Why choose this? Choose me." Aria thought about that. About the moment she'd heard his screams and run toward them instead of away. About the instant she'd seen his gold eyes open and heard him whisper, "Help," with his last strength. About the way his broken song had called to hers, two incomplete melodies recognizing each other in the darkness. She signed slowly, carefully, "Because you asked. Because you needed. Because that's what healers do. And because." She hesitated, then finished, "Your song. Heard your song. Still fighting. Still beautiful. Worth saving." Cassian stared at her for a long moment. Then he lifted her marked hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture of gratitude or maybe something more, something neither of them was ready to name. "Thank you," he whispered. "For seeing something in me worth saving." That night, as Aria drifted off to sleep with Cassian's warmth beside her and Marin keeping watch, she dreamed of songs. Not the silent soul songs she knew, but real songs. Songs with words and melodies. Songs she could hear not just in her heart but with her ears. And in the dreams, she was singing them. Actually singing them, her voice clear and strong and beautiful. When she woke, her throat ached as if she'd been screaming. The golden marks had spread to her jawline. And somewhere in the darkness, something ancient stirred, awakened by a Songweaver who refused to let death have its way.